This paper is written by Robert Pei. Is Malaysia Agreement 1963 a valid international agreement? That the MA 63, purporting to be an international treaty to form the Federation of Malaysia, was null and void, and not binding on the signatory parties from the beginning. That is, void ab initio. So Robert has three propositions relating to the validity of MA 63. The first proposition is that the Malaysia Agreement as an international treaty was not validly met in compliance with principles and rules of international law and UND 1960. Second proposition, if MA 63 was valid, was it not abrogated by Singapore's separation and independence from Malaysia in 1965? Then there's a third proposition, assuming that MA 63 was valid despite propositions 1 and 2, has Malaya completely repudiated MA 63 by 51 years of non-compliance and failure to implement MA 63 as an international treaty and the Malaysia experiment itself? What is an international treaty? Well, Malaysia Agreement 63 is an international treaty. It's lodged with the United Nations. It's an agreement in written form between nation states or can be international agencies such as United Nations. They've been given treaty-making capacity by the states that created them. That is intended to establish a relationship governed by international law. So the first proposition that the MA 63 purporting to be an international treaty to form the Federation of Malaysia was null and void. Therefore, it's not binding of the signatory parties from the beginning. Okay. So it's asserted here that MA 63 was not validly met in compliance with established principles and rules of international law and the 1960 UNDD. MA 63 is invalid from the beginning according to Robert's proposition. International law says that only sovereign states can enter into valid international treaties. Was MA 63 in between 5 sovereign states? It's purportedly made between 5 sovereign states on the 9th of July 1963, being the United Kingdom, Malayan Federation, Singapore, North Borneo, and Sarawak. In reality, the Malaysia Agreement was actually entered into between only 2 independent sovereign states, UK and Malaya. Malaya became independent in 1957. With a semi-colonial Singapore state, Singapore is still under British control, and they declared UDI, Unilateral Declaration of Independence, on 31st August 1963, which made Tunku very, very mad. And the 2 colonies of North Borneo, which is Sabah, and Sarawak. On July 1963, when the Malaysia Agreement was being inked, Sarawak and Sabah are still colonies. British colonial officials signed MA 63 on behalf of Sabah and Sarawak. So a colony has no independent international representation, and its top-level administration is under direct control of the metropolitan state that owns the colony. So Sarawak and North Borneo were under direct control of United Kingdom at the time MA 63 was made. That neither Sarawak nor North Borneo were independent sovereign states on 9 July 1963 is confirmed by the fact that Sarawak was only ostensibly granted self-rule on 22nd July 1963, and Sabah was similarly granted self-rule, which is they call independence, on 31st August 1963. The respective new Sabah and Sarawak governments ratified MA 63 on the first session. So Sarawak in its 1st to 7th September 1963 sitting. That's much longer after the agreement was signed. So who are the signatories for Sarawak? They are P.E.H. Pike, who is the Attorney General of Sarawak. He's British. Okay, Tun juga, Aban Haji Mustafa, Lim Ben Siu, and Aban Haji Open. Okay, you must remember, we attained self-government only on 22nd July 1963. MA 63 was signed on the 9th July 1963. So these signatories do they have the mandate to sign on behalf of Sarawak? Okay, that's a question. So MA 63 is fundamentally flawed. So on its very face, the MA63 document displayed a fatal and fundamental flaw, which was clearly in breach of the established principle that only sovereign states can enter into valid agreements with other states. In 1941, after 100 years of Brooke rule, the last Raja, Vanna Brooke, gave us the Sarawak Constitution 1941, and also the 9 cardinal principles. These 9 cardinal principles is a preamble to a Sarawak Constitution. So as early as 1941, we already have a constitution. Okay, so if you look at principle number 8 of the 9 cardinal principles, that the goal of self-government shall always be kept in mind, that the people of Sarawak shall be entrusted in due course with the governance of themselves, and that continuous efforts shall be made to hasten the reaching of this goal by educating them in the obligations, responsibilities, and the privileges of citizenship. So you can say actually these 9 cardinal principles is like our independence charter. When the people of Sarawak are ready, self-government shall be given to the people of Sarawak. Britain committed a deliberate, shameful breach of the trust placed in them by the former Sarawak government by failing to honor the agreement to restore Sarawak independence, and as reiterated and demanded by Sarawak nationalists in 1963. So this breach of trust is a fundamental breach of trust which nullified MA63, as Britain had deliberately refused to fulfill a prior treaty. The precondition to restore Sarawak independence so that people can then freely decide on the Malaysia issue if they choose to. So Sarawak was transferred and remained as a colony in status up to and after 16 September 1963. So this Malaysia concept was changed 3 times. 1, Brunei refused to sign at the last minute. They opted out because BNP told them to opt out, because actually it's all oil interest. Okay. So the second time it's changed was Singapore secession from Malaysia without consulting its 2 partners, Sarawak and Sabah. And on 27 August 1976, the federal constitution was amended to change the status of Sarawak and Sabah into 12 and 13 states, in breach of the understanding of equal partnership in the formation of Malaysia. Okay, MA63 was signed by 5 countries, and Sarawak, Sabah, and Malaya. There are 3 countries. So when they amended the federal constitution in 1976, instead of 3 countries forming Malaysia, we become 13 states forming Malaysia. So that is the argument. If Malaysia Agreement is void and illegal, the people of Sabah and Sarawak are not bound to remain in an unequal and unfair relationship with Malaya, which may see as no more than a colonial master and slave relationship with the country being plundered and the people marginalized in greater poverty than before 1963. So if MA63 is illegal, Malaysia only exists as a de facto state, where Malaya is controlling Sabah and Sarawak without any legal right. Then the issues of separation and independence, like former partner Singapore, become relevant. We have case studies like East Timor, Kosovo, South Sudan, and Crimea. They've chosen independence from what was, an unequal and submissive relationship. So Scotland will, for similar reasons, be voting in its independence referendum on September 2014. Okay, thank you.